How's it going, everybody? This is Dave Meltzer. We're going to be here for the next 2 hours talking pro wrestling. In fact, we're actually going to be talking mixed martial arts and pro wrestling today because we've got Frank Shamrock here in San Jose, and we'll be starting our interview with him actually relatively soon. We're going to, of course, take phone calls and emails and get through the news as well. And we got Brian Alvarez as well. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
That's good. Let me try again. The website has not been updated for technical reasons, and I'm not aware of what the technical reasons are other than we can't update it. And so there's all kinds of articles that have been written in the last 2 days that are not up there, and I hope they'll be up there by the end of the day today. So for those of you who are up there going like, you know, how come that article you guys were talking about yesterday isn't there? It actually is. You just can't get it. And
That's part of it. A dozen things up there right now that were just waiting to appear.
Yeah. So
they're in the ether right now, the internet ether.
Yeah. At some point, they will all magically appear at once, and we'll have like times like Wednesday and Thursday days of when they were first up. But they're actually, you know. So anyway, that's just a scoop. What can I say? It'll be up in due time, I guess. Hopefully today, maybe tomorrow, maybe not. UPN officially released its schedule today, and SmackDown is Thursday night, 8 to 10, so that's a done deal. Let's see, electronic media. This was there's some scary stuff today. Electronic media reported that Vince McMahon wants to start his own film franchise and, you know, do movies that would involve both WWF talent and WWF storylines. And then there was another article, business article, it was on it was CBS Media Watch Online, I think it was.
When you see China and Lita spanking each other on the big screen.
But the article said that the WWF is hoping that within 5 years that 50% of the television it produces is not wrestling. And that would be, you know, I don't know.
I think the way that they were referring to it was that they would add a certain amount of television, which would mean that the current hours they have of WWF television would just be 50%, as opposed to like cutting out half of what they're already putting on TV.
Oh yeah. They're not cutting back on wrestling programming, but they're going to start producing a lot more non-wrestling programming. And, you know, whenever, you know, there's a track record of whenever the WWF ventures into non-wrestling, it doesn't do so well, and that kind of was what it is. Mick Foley's book will be number one on the bestseller list, New York Times bestseller list, in the New York Times, that will appear on the 27th of May, which is really impressive. And Brian was on a chat with Mick Foley, as I was for a little while today before I had to do another chat. And Brian, why don't you give everyone the major highlights of Mick Foley's interview today?
Actually, the major highlights, as far as things that people wouldn't have known yet, were the thing you just talked about with May 27th, New York Times bestseller list. He's going to be number one. And I thought the other interesting thing was David Schwartz, at the very beginning of the chat, started talking about how there's nothing new to say on WCW, and they're already getting defensive about the ratings. He said Raw on TNN remains the highest-rated show on cable, and NASCAR, which is considered the hottest sports property, last week's NASCAR show came in second to the WWF, and they're the hottest sports property. Although he did not say what the rating was for that show, so I don't know if it's close now because the Raw ratings have dropped or whatever, but they pretty much made it clear that things are going just fine in the ratings. So I guess that was probably also in response to the rumors that WWF was looking to get out of his contract with TNN and go back to USA, which don't count on it. Pretty much for the Mick Foley deal, he said he was considering doing a WrestleMania match, which we've talked about before, but he backed out because he couldn't get his heart into it. And they asked him, you know, if you do another return match, would you like to be someone like Austin or Triple H that you could maybe have an actual wrestling match with, or somebody like Vince? And he said that for storyline purposes, he'd rather do Vince, and also because if he had to go out there with Austin or Hunter, he'd have to be in really great shape. And as far as Vince, I think the exact words he used were he could fumble through it with Vince. So looks like it'll probably be
with garbage can lids and things like that.
Yeah, Foley and Vince. So talked about New York Times coming to his house and researching him for an article, which he said he assumed would be a positive article. And I don't know if you can actually assume that, but they were there.
You never make those assumptions.
And he said that he thought they could that this would help break down the walls as far as reviewers go, because he had a lot of problems with the first book as far as reviewers not taking it seriously and that sort of thing. So
Frank,
I guess we'll see.
I want to ask you one thing, since we were on that on the subject. How many times have you been interviewed for television pieces that you assumed would be positive pieces and assumed wrong?
I would have to say 98% of the time, each and every. And the other 2%, I just think slipped by in editing. And I couldn't get the real story out of it.
Does that, hey, because we talk about this with wrestling all the time, does it kind of frustrate you when, you will be interviewed and they'll take something that you say out of context, totally out of context, where when it appears on the screen, it's something like, you remember that the one that reminded me would be the piece, I think was it MSNBC, Brian, or NBC?
MSNBC.
MSNBC, okay. And they did that whole piece on Ultimate Fighting, and they had the quote from you that, the highest paid guy gets $2,500 a fight, which you meant at a minor show.
Mm-hmm.
And they acted like that's what you were getting when you were fighting Tito Ortiz or something.
Yeah.
The way they presented it.
Yeah, it's frustrating. And it's frustrating not only from the standpoint as a public figure, but also from, an athlete, because I'm trying to promote the sport, and everyone just takes it and kind of tweaks it to sell tickets. So that part is hard. But it's also hard as a figure, because, everyone's going to talk, shit anyways.
Yeah.
And, it just doesn't help when, they can twist your words and twist the footage and do all kinds of things that aren't the truth and make you look kind of funky. So every public figure has that problem right now. I know it.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, when we talk about wrestling getting negative treatment in the media, sometimes unfairly, I have to say that I think UFC has gotten, more unfair treatment than almost anything that I know of.
I think so. But, it was the bloodiest, dirtiest, boldest product for a long time. So
that's right. That's how they marketed it.
It was the key number one target, so that was part of the problem. But, we've had a lot of bad press, and it continues on. But at the same time, we're starting to get some positive press. And, all the fighting entertainment sports are starting to get some positive press for the influence that they have on the community and the people. And besides just beating each other up.
I'm going to go real quick. This is the.
What's your percentage on TV shows, Dave?
As far as what?
Accuracy.
ESPN Outside the Lines was by far the best. And they were well researched. And, everything that I said I needed backup for, they weren't going to accept anything. So, I would say that of all of the shows that I've dealt with, ESPN Outside the Lines was so far and away more professional than anybody else. It wasn't even funny.
Did they take the Observer for backup?
Did they use No, they didn't.
They wouldn't accept that?
No, if it was something that I had written, but I needed to give them the sources and things like that.
Okay, yeah.
And, and a lot of people, ESPN Outside the Lines was heavily criticized by people in wrestling, for probably being too accurate with the truth, actually. But, it wasn't necessarily, it was both positive and negative. It was a very fair piece. As far as other stuff, I can't say, it's 98% bad. There's been some very good and some very bad. I would say probably 60, 70% good. Really. More than half. I don't know.
It's pretty good.
In the poll, what is wrestling missing in your eyes most today? 31% said good storylines. 44% said the creation of new superstars. 1% said there's not enough good interviews, which is really interesting.
A whole 1%.
Yeah, 13. Let me see. Yeah.
It's Vince Russo.
The 13% said not enough different companies, which is really interesting because I would have said that one. And 11% said not enough good matches. So the real thing is people want new superstars, which is exactly what everyone emails us all day long about. And, Mick Foley, I could tell the little bit that I listened to about the first 20, 30 minutes of his thing. All of the frustrations that we have, I sensed in him too. He was saying there's not enough, not that we always talk about there's not enough comedy, but after all those bumpers that Al put on of Edge and Christian, it was like hitting me in the head, with that, oh my God, an angle. It's like, oh my God, this has been missing in wrestling, that fun aspect of it. And he said that, he didn't think that there was enough good comedy on there. And also, he was pretty much, you could tell he could sense the frustration with the lack of elevation of superstars. Not that he would knock any of the guys who were there. And I wouldn't knock the guys who were there that much, other than you got to get more of them, because someone said something up, and I think he said something to the effect of, those guys, but how many times can you watch those same guys wrestle each other all the time?
Well, he pretty much said that as the thing wore on. Probably the last 10 minutes, they were asking him all the questions about that, and I mean, he pretty much said, we need some new faces up there, but then it was the same thing as yesterday when they asked him, well, who's it going to be? He just goes, I don't know. I don't know who they could bring up right now.
So he didn't he didn't say anything because one of the things he mentioned was that when he was doing the injury angle, he wanted Edge and Christian to do it so they would get the rub of being the ones who put him out. Mm-hmm. And then as it turned out, it didn't elevate them at all, but, it was, as usual with Mick Foley, I mean, he from his aspect, he did the right thing.
Well, when they asked him about writing, as far as because they asked him earlier if he would ever think about doing writing for the writing crew or whatever, and he said,
I was the one who asked that one.
Oh, that's right, you did. And he goes, it's too much pressure, blah, blah, blah. And then later on, somebody decided, well, we'll ask the exact same question, but we'll ask if he would ever think of writing WCW TV. And, he had to basically say the same thing again, but this time he said, I'm not good at writing storylines for other people. I'm good at writing storylines for myself that get other people over. So, there you go.
Well, maybe he can make himself a character and write his aspect of the show together.
Beats him up every week?
Everybody just gets it. Yeah. Hey, he made Hunter.
That's right.
He made the monster. Anyway, let's see. Well, we'll start with some emails on wrestling, and you guys can email in. We'll start taking phone calls in a little while. We'll interview Frank right after this break. Let me just see. Okay, this is more about the article on Mick Foley. The article on wrestling, the state of wrestling interview with Mick Foley. They will be up as soon as the website can be updated. I don't know when that is. Thomas goes, was Jackie the only black female in wrestling history to win an individual heavyweight championship? I remember Sandy Parker holding some minor title. No one else pops into my head. I mean, I could look it up, but I don't know. This is, why has there been sudden hatred for Triple H? It is not hatred. It is just, we were just talking about the reality of what's going on in this. I got to say this. When I was listening to the chat, okay, Brian, were you as frustrated with, not all, but some of the questions? I know
exactly the question that you're talking about, and it was the person that called up and said, there have been a lot of rumors about politics in the backstage area, and we all know that's not true, Mick, but can you tell us, your thoughts on it? And Foley's like, well, there are some upper mid-carders that are frustrated with the pristine glass ceiling, blah, blah, blah. And the guy goes, and we've also heard these rumors about Shawn Michaels being sent home for being in no condition to perform, and we all know that's not true, Foley, but what have you heard about that? And he goes, well, I heard he showed up in no condition to perform, and he was sent home. And I was just sitting there going, Jesus, God, can I just say something here? But I couldn't.
I know, I wanted to say something, too. It's like, and you're, I mean, it's like, how do these people become reporters when they just, it's like, it's all these rumors being made up. It's like, God knows there's enough fake rumors in wrestling that come out every single day. But, some stuff that's out there, it's you know what I mean? It doesn't take a rocket scientist.
My favorite is about halfway through, Foley, just tell he's getting frustrated because I think it was Al Isaacs just goes, Foley, you know that your books have influenced a lot of other wrestlers to write books? And Foley just goes, who? And he goes, well, Goldberg. And Foley goes, I didn't get him to write a book. He was going to write a book anyway. And I just thought, come on, Foley, hit him with it.
Yeah, and then the other one is like, which he correctly said is, nobody else really has written a book. It's everyone else has had ghostwriters write books. He is the only one who wrote a book. I mean, China didn't write that book. It was her words and it was what she, you know what I mean?
China's the only book that didn't hit number one.
Yeah, but it hit like number 2 or 3, didn't it?
It didn't hit one.
It didn't hit 1.
I'm just pointing it out because when David Schwartz when John from the WWF was talking about all these books hitting number 1, he goes, oh God, what did he say? Something like all 6 books have hit the New York Times bestseller list. And I just knew that he wanted to say all 6 have hit number 1, but he couldn't. Why?
Well, no. The history of WrestleMania never hit number 1. I mean, it never even cracked the top 10, but it did get as high as, I think, 12. And then, let's see. Anyway, it seems like in the space of the end of No Way Out, people went from praise to hatred for Triple H. Is it because he's working against or have people decide he's on top because he's doing things to hold other people down? It's just the politics and the frustration. It's Triple H almost, the problem with Triple H, he's got Vince's ear. And, we don't know what he says to Vince, but we do. And, because we read it. And, when you read it and you know what it is, it's kind of like, it's like that stuff about, Chris Benoit, you know what I mean? These are the reasons why, these are the reasons why all of these guys are not ready to be at the top. And it's like, you can say that you certainly could have said that about Triple H and Rock a couple of years ago, but if Vince had listened at that point, his company would have been in a lot worse shape because there would have been no new main eventers then. Let's see. This is from John Bork, who goes, in relation to the ratings, I think the WWF raised the bar so high with WrestleMania 17 that following the show, everything was going to seem stale. Plus, Rock was making movies which couldn't come at a worse time. Maybe finally the WWF is seeing Austin as a heel and no major baby faces. They got nothing. Even bringing in one of the major WCW names like Booker T for a couple of WWF appearances would reinvigorate some interest in the product. Right now, nobody cares. Undertaker and Kane are not what we were led to believe they were. Nobody gives a crap, as he says. Yeah, they need, we all know, they need new baby faces, Undertaker and Kane. I sense that from Foley, too, that he kind of recognized that the babyface side needed a lot of shoring up right now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. What's up with WWF going back to USA? Could this happen? It could. It won't. I mean, I don't want to say it won't like 100%, but it didn't happen. And I've had that one denied from so many different people in the last day. It's just over and over again. Now, as far as I've also had denied that there's any problems with TNN, which TNN half-assed denied, and WWF has denied to me as well. But that one, I don't believe. So we'll just leave it at that. Let's see. This is Hogan and Andre, were people really unsure how this match was going to turn out? I guess maybe some people were. I just, trying to remember back. I mean, to me, it was like so obvious what the finish was going to be. But I think the general public.
You're talking about fans?
Yeah.
Or you're talking about the A&E special where even the wrestlers...
Oh, no. There was no question about that. Hey, I mean, I knew, in December going in, basically what that finish was going to be, which was the leg drop. So, the idea that they didn't know till the day of the event if Andre was going to do it. I mean, everyone who's been around that scene that has talked to me has told me that story is just utter BS. Was Andre undefeated until this point? Obviously not.
Yes.
No, he wasn't. Let's see. It should be noticed that this is the first year with TNN instead of USA. A lot of college students are coming home, but I would have thought that the rating would go up because many college TV networks don't offer TNN. So it's got to be show quality. But that wouldn't really matter anyway, because the rating is based on the percentage of people who can get it in the first place. So the fact that you can't get the show does not affect the rating of the show at all. Let's see. Let's see what else we've got here. I've got a bunch of other stuff. This is more.
Yeah, but if there are a bunch of homes, I think what he's trying to say is if there are a bunch of homes that have TNN, and the teenagers that live in those homes are at college, and they suddenly come to those homes and start turning on Raw, shouldn't that help?
The rating should go up. Then it should help. Theoretically, you're right. But I don't think that there's enough of those people that it actually makes a statistical difference. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's 1.2.
Yeah.
That's a lot of college kids.
Yeah. Here is another one. I hear you are not a big fan of Triple H, and I'd like to know why.
That indicates you did not listen to the show to say that he hears.
Yes. Okay, so I don't have to answer it, do I? It's not... let's see... I have fallen asleep during the last two Raws and the last SmackDown. Are Vince and JR asleep at the wheel? The WWF is slowly turning into WCW. Painful. Yeah, we're hearing more of that. Here's what I'm hoping for Judgment Day involving Benoit. Since it makes sense for Angle to win his medals back in the ladder match, have Edge and Christian interfere so Angle doesn't get the clean win, and Benoit has more heat with Edge and Christian. I think that's how it's going to go. I would guess that, too. That would be what makes sense. Then have Benoit be Jericho's mystery partner for the tournament, and have them win the tag team titles, eliminating Edge and Christian, and then have them
So Benoit's going to wrestle twice in this...
4 times. 4 times.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Well, 2 different matches.
And then on Monday, have Benoit and Jericho win the tag team titles from Hunter and Steve Austin.
I hope this person did not send his resume to the WWF.
I know, they're looking for writers. But actually, you know what? I'll tell you what, I thought about that exact same thing, and it makes perfect sense.
It does, but it'll never happen. That's only...
I don't expect it to happen either. Let's see. I am an ECW. This is from Rick Lorette, who goes, I'm an ECW mark, and I'm going through withdrawal, as a lot of wrestling fans are, as noted by the ratings. Why doesn't WWF do something with Sunday Night Heat? As it is now, it's a complete waste of a potentially great hour of programming. Look at the time slot in the channel. It goes up against nothing. Does it go up against 60 Minutes?
That's a totally different demographic, but yeah.
Yeah, you are right. No, but the show doesn't advance the storylines. It doesn't develop new angles or groom new talent. If I could play armchair booker, I would make a WWF hardcore show in that time slot with serious hardcore competition and let the guys do what we know they can. Let Paulie book it for the main event, defend the hardcore title every week, and have qualifying matches as the other matches. I'm sick of wrestling, of watching Raw and seeing them waste the first half an hour on those long, pointless promos. It makes the mid-card matches all go 3 minutes each. Give the town a place to shine. All right, I've got more on this, but I'll save my breath because you probably aren't going to see this happen anyway. I mean, I would think that they should use those MTV hour and introduce the WCW there because it's a much better hour. We've talked about this before. I just think it's, they're negotiating with Viacom, and I don't know. Let's see. This is from Lenny, who goes, I'm sick and tired of hearing the argument that we're in the post-WrestleMania doldrums to explain the ratings. If anyone goes back to look at the highest-rated episodes of Raw, most of them occur during the months May through August. This argument may have held water in the 80s and the early 90s, but there's no recent history to justify this radical drop-off. Actually, the old patterns of wrestling, let's face it, the WF stinks right now. That's why people aren't watching at the previous levels. The sooner everyone takes their blinders off, the better. As far as, the patterns of ratings, as I recall, wrestling always did really strong from January through June. And then as the summer got going, the ratings would decline. And then with TBS, which used to be the key one, and with USA, because when football would start, the wrestling would go against college football, and on the Saturdays, and that would hurt the ratings in the fall. And then of course the Raw before that the primetime wrestling would go against Monday Night Football, and that would hurt the ratings. And then when football went in January, as a seasonal pattern, that's what would happen. So I mean, there was never. But as I recall, August used to do real well. Raw used to always do real well in August. So I don't know. I want to make mention of one thing before we start with Frank. There was an interview on Bloomberg Television. I did not see it, but we've gotten plenty of emails about it, saying that Linda McMahon said WCW would be launched within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and I'm not sure exactly why she said that, other than maybe she meant.
She's probably referring to the angle at King of the Ring.
That could be.
Because I mean, as far as as of 1 hour ago, TNN knew nothing about it, and they said we're still negotiating. So.
Well, there is no deal. So I mean, there is no deal with TNN.
So the relaunch can't have anything to do with TV, in other words.
Well, you can't relaunch the product without television. So I mean, now they may. She may be talking about that they would have all their ducks in a row as far as they would have a writing staff. You know what I mean? They would start working on it. I mean, get the writers together and all that, hire the people. Because, they haven't even done that yet. Get the production crew together. Sign everyone to contracts that they need to sign. Because aside from those 24 wrestlers that everyone knows that are under contract, they haven't signed anyone. They have not signed any announcers. They have not signed road agents. They haven't signed referees. They haven't signed writers. Production people, although a lot of production people are the same as the WF. So maybe that's what she means, is that they would do all of their hiring and all of that work would be done within 3 weeks. But as far as when it debuts on television, I mean, we're probably looking at September at the earliest, maybe August if we're lucky. I mean, it's not going to be anytime soon. They got to finalize the deal, and there's some holdups. Right? It's all in the Observer this week as far as but there's holdups in the deal. There's a big thing going between TNN and WWF and also Time Warner, that big stalemate of who's going to do what and who's going to blink, and it's holding everything up, and TNN, they want different wrestlers on the show. They don't want it to be, WF Light, and WWF doesn't want it to be WF Light either, because the big money is going to be in the crossover matches anyway. We will start with Frank. Frank, how are you today?
I'm pretty good.
That's good. You're moving.
I'm moving back to San Jose area.
Any reason why?
Just LA sucks, and the traffic's really heavy, and I also got clearance for my shoulder, and I'm looking to fight in either September or November, somewhere around there.
Do you have any specific company, or is it just sort of like you're waiting for the offers?
Not really. I'm negotiating with the 3 major fighting companies right now as to when and where I'm going to fight.
Okay, we've got Pride and we've got UFC. What's number 3?
Number 3 would be the K1.
Okay.
And their presence in whatever fighting. They're very interested in doing a mixed martial arts show. it's still in the development stages, but I'm negotiating with them as well.
Did you go to the K1 in Vegas?
I didn't.
Okay, so you didn't.
I didn't, but I heard it was an exceptional show.
Did you? Because I haven't even heard anything about it, other than I know Maurice won the tournament.
Yeah, Maurice won, which was phenomenal. And then the show went really well, and there was a lot of response from the E! Channel, from a lot of different media avenues about the K1 and the interest in it and stuff. So that looks to be a new company that's getting stronger in the United States as well.
As far as you go, as far as the announcing with the UFC and the UFC and the last Pride, the one thing about both shows has been the total, I'd say, unpredictability of the results.
Totally, yeah.
What do you attribute to the fact? I mean, it's just everyone's getting good. I mean, we had Brian Johnston here, for the show that you announced, the UFC, and I think he picked five out of 6 matches, or all 6 matches wrong. And I mean, he's trained with most of these guys. He knows the subject. And, most people picked at least 3 or 4 wrong.
Yeah, I picked at least, 3 or 4 wrong on this show. It's just that everybody is getting so good, and the sport evolves each and every time. Every 3 months there are new techniques and styles and things that are winning. So it's getting more and more difficult in that sense. And then the other sense is there's been a couple rule changes in each organization that have greatly affected the outcome of fights. One rule change, like no knees to the back of the head, greatly affects the style and the outcome and the pace of a fight. And it really tests who's prepared.
Okay, you're fighting in Pride versus you're fighting in UFC. What would be the difference in your preparation with the different rules?
Now, it seems like the rules are pretty much, the Pride has regressed to older rules.
Well, they do the kicking on the ground and all that.
Yeah, and then the UFC has gotten even stricter on their rules. Personally, I prefer less rules. The less rules, the better, in my opinion, because you can do stuff more efficiently. You don't have these rules hindering you. People would say it's more this, that, or whatever, but it's real fighting with, limited rules. The UFC is becoming extremely restrictive. They're focusing heavily on the athlete, but at the same time, I don't feel like they are providing the entertainment like it used to be.
Really? Because I thought the last show was an awesome show.
It was a great show. It was a phenomenal show. But the level at where the sport is at, I think the shows can be better and the fights can be better. I think the rules are inhibiting some of the athletes in some of their specialties. And I don't have any specialties. I'm just whatever works kind of guy, so it doesn't affect me. But people, wrestling, striking, different rules are affecting different people in different ways, and we're seeing huge results, immediately in those, how those styles play out. But both of the shows, all 3 of the shows, everybody is really, really working hard to, make this the next biggest thing in, fighting entertainment. So, everybody's doing their part. It's just a matter of time, I feel, until we really get back on cable.
I think that probably now, do people talk to you, or is it even discussed the fact that, with ECW and WCW both closing down, that all of a sudden pay-per-view, as far as the wrestling genre, in the pay-per-view genre, you've really got WWF, and you've got the big boxing, and you've got nothing else. And, UFC used to be up there a few years ago with, it was behind the wrestling and obviously behind the big boxing, but it was clearly the number 3 thing out there. Then it got taken away, and wrestling got so huge. Now wrestling, with the exception of the WWF shows, doesn't even exist anymore. There's, I would think, logic would tell you, and that doesn't mean it's going to happen, that this is the time for a UFC comeback, if it gets clearance.
Not only time for the comeback, but time for, really solidifying this as a real sport and it being, the next big deal. When we lost cable, our audience just went to wrestling. It's the same stuff. It's fighting entertainment. They just have more entertainment than we do. It's the same stuff, and that's where our audience would. We fully expect, as this pay-per-view dollar comes around, to drag that audience back in. Because it's the same stuff. The stories aren't as good, but the fights are a hell of a lot better.
Yeah.
In what we do. And it's, the big 3 companies are really working on what I consider to be fighting entertainment. Look at WWF. It's fighting entertainment. It may not be real. They're taking hard bumps. They're doing their thing. But it's still fighting entertainment. People go there to see the show. And I think that, these 3 companies need to look at the audience and provide them with entertainment.
Now, where do you draw the line? This is an interesting promotional thing, because when you get too much like wrestling, everybody starts going oh my God, you're trying to be wrestling. Wrestling's the most horrible thing. But if you don't do any of that stuff, then you're too pure sport.
Right.
And you know, we've talked about this all the time. You can have the greatest fighters in the world, and if people don't know the personalities, they don't care. If you have two guys, and they don't got to be the greatest fighters, and in Japan they prove this all the time. If the two personalities are over and they mix, you can draw huge crowds. And I mean, you and I both know, hey, these guys couldn't beat any top fighter, but you know, like Ogawa and Satake, perfect example.
Yes.
Huge television hit because they were both over guys in Japan. But, you know, would they beat Mark Holman could probably beat both of them, no problem. But Mark Holman couldn't draw that TV rating.
Yeah, and it is a shame, but, you know, it comes down to the almighty dollar, which is stronger. Where do we cross the line and go into entertainment, as opposed to having fighting involved? You know, my thought is anybody, with the desire and the guts and the balls to do this for a living, to fight no rules, is a pretty interesting person.
Most of them are, yeah.
Is a pretty unique guy, because there's not a lot of guys that are going to do this. There's not a lot of guys that can even watch this. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of women that can sit down and go, wow, that's really interesting. So it takes a special kind of person to do it. My thought is, you know, that's an interesting person. We should build that person. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get in there and put my life on the line or my, balls on the line every time for the rest of my life. But there's someone else going to do that. And I want to follow that guy and see what they're about, because that's a gutsy thing to do. And I just feel like that the emphasis has been on fighting. It's not about fighting. It's about these really interesting people that are getting in and fighting.
And the story behind the fight.
And the story behind the fight. And the perfect example is one of the best-selling stories we've had in recent history was me and Tito. It was a great story, and it went on and on and on, and then it came to a final conclusion and an end. And everyone's like, do the story again. It's like, well, you know what? This is real fighting. You got to get a better story. That one hurt a lot. But the stories are more interesting. The fight, that's the celebration. And we got to take that from wrestling and from, and
boxing too.
Boxing, from football, from everything. Vince McMahon, as mad as he is, took a huge chance, and he's paving a way for some unique kind of entertainment. We are a unique, extreme fighting sport entertainment. And people that want that, they demand it, and they will get it.
What do you think, and this could happen, it's happened in wrestling before, it's happened in fighting, it's happened in boxing a lot, but with UFC, I think it would be far more damaging than that. And, it happens in boxing 3-4 times every year, is someone die in combat.
It's a risk. I mean, anything could happen.
It could happen. Yeah, we know that.
Anything could happen. And win, lose, draw, hurt, God forbid someone dies in what we do at this point, which would, it would desecrate us for years. It would be really, really hard to come back from. But at the same time, there's all these other pro athletes and pro sports and professional people, putting it on the line and injuring themselves. It's just that we still got that hook, that title, that dirty image about us. This sport, in my opinion, and I've been doing it for 7 years and nothing else. And I've never been injured except in training, screwing around. I've never been hurt in a fight. I've never felt like in a fight that I could not win. I've never felt like I was going to get hurt and I was scared for my life. I've never felt like that. And a lot of that is preparation and understanding what's going on. But the people that walk in there, they're men and they're professional athletes, and they have no, confusion or notation. We know what's going on, and if someone gets hurt, that happens. But thank God it's never happened to me, and God willing, it won't happen to any of our guys, any of our friends, family, fellow athletes until, or hopefully. It doesn't happen.
This has turned in. When it first started, years and years ago, I remember, going to the shows, seeing you at the original shows when Ken was fighting. And there were all these people all these strange people flying in who didn't know each other. Everyone was sight unseen. I mean, except for Ken and Hoist Gracie, nobody knew who anyone was. And then they were not top caliber fighters, certainly by today's standards, and, just because it hadn't evolved. Now it's a very close community. I mean, as far as, everyone knows the names of all the guys. They kind of know everyone's strengths. No one's going to come out of a bar and beat a top guy. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, you got to know got to know this game. You got to train for this game. How has that changed, like when you were, not even competing at this, you were in Pancras in those days, but going to these shows, 93, 94, 95, compared to now going as a commentator and in the last couple of years as well as a competitor?
It's been really different, and not only being involved, but just watching the evolution of what's happened. Because like you said, it was basically a bunch of unknown people who were all just as scared of everyone else as they were. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were all sitting around pretending like they were tough, scared out of their minds. It's the same group of guys. They're all pretending like they're tough, and they're all scared out of their minds. But we all know each other, and it's been 7-8 years, and we've built this community of things. The really good thing about our community is everybody is extremely knowledgeable. This is an internet-driven, knowledge-based industry. This extreme fighting stuff. So our fans know exactly what's going on. Those have truly been what have supported us and brought us to this point. Otherwise, we'd have faltered a long time ago, in my opinion. But it's hard. It's hard in this profession because we don't get respect, and we're the first guy to get picked on. We're the first show to go, cut it because it's dangerous for us. It has a bad image. And then people still think that we are, out cockfighting.
Yeah.
That we're, that you and I are going to stand up and start beating each other up at any second.
That's right. The minute I say the wrong word to you, I'm a dead man. Yes.
And we're going to beat each other down, and then the show's got to stop in the whole 9 yards. But people, they miss the point that we are professional athletes doing this all day, every day long, like any other professional. And we're just looking to build our industry to where it's respected like that.
Now, a lot of teams, we talk with a lot of wrestlers and everything about training, and in your training, I don't know that you guys diet as much as the wrestlers, because the wrestlers have to have a certain look, okay? And I was kind of half-assed talking about you yesterday, as I mentioned you before we went on the air, in that, you train extremely hard, but you don't diet like a wrestler does. You kind of, and you're lucky too, but got with the metabolism, you can eat whatever you want to eat for the most part. But you guys train so hard as far as, because you got to train. You got to do wrestling. You got to do kickboxing. You got to have cardio or you're dead no matter how much skill you have. Just tell a little bit about pre-fight training. Yeah,
pre-fight training is, a 4 to 5 hour day of weightlifting, cardiovascular training, boxing, wrestling, grappling, conditioning, everything. It's just like being a professional athlete in any other sport. Except we don't get the respect of everyone else. But, the athlete is evolving, and the sport is evolving, and everything is getting better and better and better. And, like we kind of talked about, it is getting more dangerous. But, my goal when I go out there is not to look good.
Yeah.
I look how I look.
Yeah.
I'm designed and streamlined for combat, for efficiency. And, the way my body looks is not as important as how I get that job done and how I get over to my fans. So there's a little bit of difference there. I don't really watch my diet. When I train, and I'm training, 4 to 5, 6 hours a day, I eat whatever I want, about 6 meals a day, smaller meals. And then I eat before I go to bed, and I eat as soon as I wake up, because that's how much I need to keep going. A lot of people do watch their diet, but, in my opinion, it doesn't matter how you look. As long as you're getting the job done, as long as you're cutting to the chase and getting from point A to point B, that's really, and a prime example is, Igor Volchanshian, one of the most dangerous guys on the planet, and he looks like, Mr. Potato Man. But he's, I wouldn't want to fight him. He's scary.
Before we go to a break, before we go to a break, I just want to ask you your thoughts, since your last 2 fights were Tito and Elvis Sinisic, and they're going to be fighting on June 29th at the Meadowlands, and you're going to be announcing. What do you look for?
I look for a good fight, a long fight. I look for Tito trying to keep it standing and Elvis trying to keep it standing, which should make it really interesting because both are not well-adapted strikers. They both strike, but they're not well-adapted at it. So that, to me, makes it an either, if they stand up, it could go either way. If they go to the ground, I see Tito winning by decision in the time limit.
Because of the superior wrestling.
Superior wrestling, superior size, rules of the game, the cage of combat. It all equals up to Tito being able to stay on top and maintain a base for an extended period of time. He can't finish Elvis unless he knocks him out. But Elvis, I don't think, can finish Tito unless he knocks him out. Mm-hmm. Which is, to me, unless it stands up, the edge will go on the ground to Tito.
You haven't beaten a fight since Boss Rutan in 1995, right?
Yeah, it's been. I lost.
Oh, Yuki Kondo.
Lober was before that. I lost to Lober.
Oh, Lober was your last one. Right. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't lost since '97.
Okay.
Into '97.
Okay, it's still been a while. No,
been a little while.
Was it? No, into '96.
Oh, it's right. 96 is 97.
97 was Kevin Jackson.
Kevin Jackson, and then Ensign Inoue, and everyone else in Japan.
That's right.
That's right.
That's right. So you are undefeated now for almost 5 years.
Nice work.
Which is pretty darn impressive.
Very, very rare in this.
And it's not probably never going to happen again. I don't think with the quality of guys. If you look at the guys out there, I mean, does it when you look at the guys coming up, I mean, because they're training for this specific sport. From, whatever, like 18, 19 years old, you started. A lot of people don't know how you started. You never fought. You never did martial arts. You never did nothing. And then, Ken taught you submissions. You went to Pancras a couple months later. Did really, really well right off the bat. What do you attribute that to and your evolution from that? Because now, at the beginning, you learned the submissions from Ken. Mm-hmm. And now, you're a lot more well-rounded, obviously, with a lot more kickboxing training, more wrestling training, more conditioning training that you really weren't doing then. Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about, the evolution of Frank Shamrock as a fighter and as an athlete.
Like we talked about, I started, April 4th of 1994 was my very first day of training. I remember that because, I didn't know anything at all. Zero. And they just completely kicked my ass for like 2 or 3 months. Because I didn't know anything about fighting whatsoever. I'd only been in 1 or 2 fights. You just hit people and they fall down. That's it. So it was an incredible eye opener for me, not only as an athlete, because it was a sport that I'd never done or never challenged myself in, but as a person. I had to fight. I had to confront people and do battle, and that was really hard for me in the beginning. I'm not a fighter. I'm an athlete. But it just happens that I got really good at this sport, which was fighting. But I'm not an aggressive person. I'm not a mean person. I'm just a competitive person. I took to it. I did well. I turned pro in 8 months, and then I fought Boss, which was my very first professional fight in the first King of Pancrase tournament. And I beat Boss on a 10-minute decision that first time. And that was the start of my career. After that, I was a pro, and I would fight every 6 weeks after that. And then eventually go from Pancrase to no rules to Vale-Tudo to limited rules to rings to everything under the sun. And it all stemmed from the submission wrestling training and experience with Ken and living in Japan. My evolution of martial arts and of fighting has been one of necessity because I didn't know anything. So it was like, okay, I'm getting my head punched in. This really need to figure out a solution here. For me, it was I committed myself 100%. Well, then I had to learn how to fight because I was getting my butt kicked if I didn't. So it was a weird.
You never done any amateur wrestling either?
Nothing ever. The only thing I've ever done in my life before that point was play volleyball and hacky sack, and chase girls. And all three I was quite adapted at. But my martial skills had suffered. But at that point, I was what was considered to be the evolution of a modern martial art, because I didn't have any martial arts. Ken came from wrestling and submission wrestling and pancration, and the Gracies came from jiu-jitsu, and everybody came from a spot. But I didn't come from anywhere. I started with scratch, with a brand new chalkboard, and we wrote on it this brand new style. Well, the next generation after me didn't have to go through any of the trial and error periods that I did. The first 3 years of punishment and injury, because I didn't understand what was going on.
And also learning how to fight, which really, for the most part, nobody really knew. Everybody was learning at the beginning.
No one really knew. People knew that if you close your fist and you start swinging, that you're in a fight. But no one really knew how to get anything else past that. And there were people were addressing the issue, but it was wrestling, it was jiu-jitsu, it was one single facet. I was one of the first in this generation to come along, which I consider the second generation, to come along that had privy to all the information without any barriers. The next generation, the third generation, this new group of guys, those are the scary guys, because they've only got pure information. They don't have any. They don't have any junk. They don't have any bad habits. They're learning exactly what works right now, the most efficient way. Whereas it took us, 5 years to dig through all the garbage. So those guys that come in, they're scary. They're phenomenal athletes, and they don't have any of the junk along with them. They're just doing pure, combat technique. This third generation will really, really be the exciting fighters. I'm an old generation now. The new one will be. It'll be astounding.
Okay, now, what, in all of this time, what theories of fighting that you were either taught or that were perceived by people would you say are total bullshit?
Fresher points.
yeah, like stuff like what we learned when we were kids that we do in a fight that absolutely I've never seen it ever work.
Yeah,
it's ever worked in the UFC.
Most of it's junk. Most of it's crap. The biggest theories and ideas that I was able to pinpoint is just simple angles. Simple mechanics of things. When you open the hood of your car, like everything is angular and mechanical, and adding that made this stuff a lot easier. And once we got to that point, all this other big flying circles and crazy arcs and everything, they weren't really addressing the problem. Traditional martial arts wasn't addressing modern combat. And it's like that in everything. Police training is 50 years behind. They're still doing the martial arts that we were doing 10 years ago. So they're so far behind, it's crazy.
You've done a little bit of that, though, haven't you?
In fact, I have a police training company that we specialize. We train U.S. Marshals and Canadian Customs and 50 different agencies in the East Coast. And in fact, we're going federal with that in the next few weeks. But it's an evolution of this whole thing. Is like you were saying, no one knew how to fight, so we were all just like out there fighting and figuring it out. And it really was a handmade industry. People made it by closing their fists and using their hands and dragging this thing along. It's just amazing how far we've come. And
in a short period of time. You look at 5 years ago, those tapes, and now, and it's the athletes are so much better.
Yeah. And it really is the athlete, and the athlete, I think, changed the sport. We got such good athletes that they went, well, hell, a little bit of this with such a good athlete will go a long, long ways. When people started figuring out the athletic side, and how necessary that was, that your body was the machine, the techniques were just the stuff you added to it. People started figuring that out. The game, it quadrupled in difficulty level.
This is a guy I never spoke to you about, but since you moved away, people have been throwing his name at me, and he fought at the last UFC, BJ Penn, and I know you're aware. I think you've trained with him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I trained with him a couple of years ago. It was our first time we trained together, and he was training up there at Half Gracie's. Real nice kid. Third generation fighter. He's a guy that has all the skills, and it's just ready available to him. There's no junk. So, sharp guy, great athlete, and he's committed himself 100% with all the right tools. And this kid is just scary. Last time I trained with him, he just couldn't get him off me. It was really depressing.
Now you're actually just starting to train again tonight, right?
Yeah, tonight will be the first night. We're going to test out the shoulder and make sure everything's okay. Try some techniques, a little sparring and screw around stuff.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, you had shoulder surgery after the fight with Elvis Sinisik. It had been bothering you. Shoulder had been bothering you from the training before the fight. It wasn't from the fight itself, right?
No, it wasn't from the fight. It was actually 2 weeks before the fight. I threw an over-relaxed punch, and I tore a slap lesion tear on top of my shoulder. So they went in orthoscopically, fixed it, patched it up, the whole 9 yards. And I've been in physical therapy for the last 4 months. So, everyone's like, what's going to happen with the shoulder? No one really knew. It was a serious surgery. So I haven't done anything for 4 months. I'm just focusing on rehab and trying to fix my shoulder. And yesterday they cleared me. They said, our physical therapist cleared me, said, go do your thing, work out hard, come back in a couple of weeks, and if everything's okay, we'll clear you permanently. So that's really been I thought that I wouldn't be able to fight again.
Really?
And that was...
You thought you were done?
Yeah. I'd never, in all of my training, 7 years as a pro, had an injury that didn't heal itself. I've never had an injury that I couldn't go to my chiropractor and have x-rayed and go, is it broken? No? Oh, okay, I'll be okay. I've never had an injury that didn't heal, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. So this was something very serious to me, and this is how I make my living. It's my body. I take the machine in and I, take it on a race, and hopefully it doesn't get any damage. I took a lot of damage, and I was very discouraged that I wouldn't be able to fight again. So
how does it feel right now?
The last couple of days have really been an eye-opener for me and uplifting because, they say it's 100% recovery, and my confidence is, skyrocketed because of that.
Brian, go ahead.
Do you still have some pain in there, or?
I do have a little bit of pain, and it's kind of crunchy. But they tell me that it's normal, and they also tell me that the reason why I hurt my shoulder was nothing that I did mechanically, but that the nerves running up and down my arms and inside of my legs are so tight from holding and clenching and doing these things for all these years that I actually punched too relaxed and the nerve ripped the tendon off the bone. So I have this big program now of stretching my nerves and building my shoulder strength. Yeah, it's very, really interesting. In fact, I went through 3 physical therapists before they figured out what was going on with me. Because I'm so relaxed, I'm so flexible, my body works so fluidly, they couldn't figure it out. And they finally dialed in and said, dude, it's your nerves. It's like your nerves are holding the rest of your body back. So,
wow.
Nerve stretches. Yeah, I know. It's very strange.
I never heard that before.
I never heard of it either. And I kept going, week after week of physical therapy.
Maybe they made it up because they couldn't think of anything else.
Kind of like the media, right?
Uh-huh.
That's right.
But, I kept going back and telling them there's pain. No matter what I do, there's pain. And eventually we dialed it down. I stretched my nerves for one day, had no pain whatsoever. And ever since then, it's been 100%.
Acting. What's up with that?
Acting is acting. I did, a couple commercials, deals. I've had a couple theatrical offers. Mostly I haven't been in town enough. They want me there and preparing, and, I really got to read for parts and stuff. But since my shoulder got hurt, I had to start, working. So I've been teaching and training and instructing and making appearances and those things. So my acting has been a little bit on hold. But again, with the acting, I've realized this. I could be the best actor in the world, like you can be the best fighter in the world. But if you're not at that spot, or you don't draw those numbers, or you don't have those people behind you, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Just period. I'm a pretty good actor right now and have the skills rudimentary to get by. My focus is going to be, I'm just going to build that. I'm going to build that film crew. I'm going to build that story about me and about this, and I'm just going to do it instead of waiting for someone else to come in and pull that out of me. So my focus is still acting of sorts. But instead of sitting on a couch and having someone else do it, I've decided I'm just going to beat people up and then use that money to do it. That's my theory.
Theoretically.
Yeah. So
well, are you concerned? You're coming back. You're a legend in the sport now, and the sport is evolving. And there's every fight, every show upsets. Certainly the quality of the competition. Mm-hmm. If you were ahead of the curve, and the results of your last 10 fights show that you were ahead of the curve, it's certainly narrowed.
Yeah, it has, and it's something that I have been studying. I've watched everybody catch up to me.
Yeah.
And it's unnerving to be at a position where you can look back at everyone else and go, I know all this stuff. I'm okay. And then a year later, have everyone knocking at your door, using the same training techniques and practicing the same stuff and being successful at it. It's unnerving. It's a little, what's going to happen. But at the same time, it's like I've been so bored over the last year, or so, just sitting around. And the last fight was total short notice for me. Yeah. So, starting today, I'm going to stop working. I'm going to give up everything I'm doing. I'm going to enter my body and myself back into training camp. And I'm going to basically turn professional athlete again. And, see the results. I may win. I may lose. I can never imagine myself losing. If I prepare and I go into it, I could never imagine. I can't imagine accepting it or allowing it to happen or it even happening. So, that's beyond me. But, rest assured, I will train and I will mentally and physically be 100%, so I don't have to worry about that.
Let's talk about a couple of the fights of the upcoming Pride. Some interesting fights. We won't even bother with Fujita and Takayama.
Yeah.
But you've trained with Fujita.
Yes.
He's got his strengths.
He has incredible strengths in wrestling, stamina. He can take a shot.
He can take a shot.
He can take a huge shot.
Yeah.
That's a strength.
Yeah.
That's a strength.
I don't know what strengths Takayama has, but
I don't know.
Have you ever bumped into him? Do you know Miro?
I have no idea who he is.
Okay. He's pro wrestler from Pro Wrestling Noah.
Yeah.
Who did the old UWF style, UWF Pro Wrestling style, and he's got size, but I don't think he's got conditioning.
Is he really 6'7"?
I don't think he's got it.
Takayama, no, I'd say he's probably 6'4" to 6'5", and I would say his weight's 270, but no way he's 6'7". But Heath Herring and Vitor Belfort.
I like that fight.
Yeah, I do too.
I think that's a really exciting fight. I would pick Heath Herring in that one.
Okay.
And the reason I would pick him is size, kicking ability, and he's got youth on his side.
Yeah.
That goes a long way.
We'll go with one more, and then we'll hit a break, and we'll start taking phone calls right after that. Igor Vovchanch and Gilbert Ivell.
Wow. I got to pick Volchanchin because I think Volchanchin can beat anybody. But really, really good stand-up fight. I think Ivell is a better stand-up fighter than Volchanchin is. Better, longer reach, and probably, in the end, more power. But I think Volchanchin has the little cage, and he's been in so many battles. You know, you can't hurt him with a punch. He's been in so many battles. He just had a war with Trey on the stand-up. So I think he's going to be able to clinch it up and somehow work it in his favor so he gets to the ground or something.
Oh, were you surprised with Trey Teligman and Igor?
I was surprised at the result, but I knew the result could happen. I was just surprised that it did happen. I knew it could happen. Like, Trey is a badass. He's always been a badass. But he's never got the training, the conditioning, everything timing, everything right. He's never got it right on one night. Something's always missing. We always go, oh, God, here goes Trey. Something's missing. But I'm assuming he had it all right because the fight I saw was phenomenal.
He took it on no notice, too.
Yeah, he took a short notice, but he looked like he was in good shape. You know, he had great gas. And, you know, he took the fight from him.
Yeah.
And I always knew, and I'll say it to Trey and say it to his face and I say it all the time. Trey is one of those guys with that scary ability. He is a fighter. Mm-hmm. He will hurt you. You know, he knows what he's doing. He's very intense and very focused on it. He just couldn't get it all together until that one night. But I'm really proud and glad that he did. It was a huge win for him.
Carlo, what's going on?
How you doing, guys?
Doing great.
My first question is for Frank. Do you believe that anybody could get into fighting or karate, regardless of their like psychological makeup? You think anybody could be like trained to fight?
Yeah,
their psychological makeup.
Yeah, like if somebody had like anxiety.
Yeah, no, you're hitting on a huge point there, and it's absolutely true. You know, a lot of people when they start are not fighters. Like a lot of people when they start in business are not businessmen. But eventually, you either get your ass handed to you in business or you become a businessman.
Yeah.
In fighting, you eventually get your ass handed to you and you either like it, dislike it, or are, you know, have no comment. Most people dislike it and become fighters, or most people dislike it and quit doing it. But I firmly believe regardless of what your psychological makeup is or how you feel about yourself and how you pertain to the world, you can hone that fighting skill and you can become very proficient at it, and I am the prime example of it.
Do you have any plans like in the future of possibly getting into wrestling, or how about Ken? Do you think is he going to return at any point?
I don't know what Ken's doing. I haven't heard much from him lately. I don't have any plans to do professional wrestling. I want to do entertainment of different sorts. That doesn't involve my body when I'm done fighting. So as soon as I can get my body out of fighting, I'll be good to follow some other different careers.
Now, you want to get involved in promotion, though, don't you?
I want to get involved in promotion. I want to get involved in acting. I want to get involved in building stars and building, stars for our future. Because this is my future, too. You know what I mean? I'm one of the old guys now, almost, and this is going to be our legacy that goes on. So, I'm really interested in helping, young fighters, building, promoting, pushing,
coaching, training,
building stars. Someone's going to be a star.
Yeah.
And, I'm a star right now. That doesn't last very long. And someone else has to come up and represent our sport. So that's kind of my focus right now is the next generation.
Kind of like Hunter.
I don't know about that. Anything else, Carlos?
As far as psychology, any type of training is really going to help a person's confidence. I mean, even if you take like a basic karate class at the YMCA and you never get in a fight in your life, and what you learn would absolutely not help you if you were attacked by somebody, I know a lot of people that they take it and it helps their confidence, and they're better off for it.
Totally. Knowledge is power.
I just have a couple questions about wrestling. First of all, I read in Dynamite Kid's book that Vince was very upset when he found out that Hacksaw Duggan and Iron Sheik were arrested.
He was. Everyone, he was.
And
for two reasons. One is because they got arrested and it made the papers, and number two is because they were in the same car in the middle of a feud. And I mean, that was, I don't think it would be damaging at all today, or very minor. But back in '87, I think was the year that happened. I mean, it was Jim Duggan, the patriotic guy, and Iron Sheik, the hated Iranian, and they're smoking dope in the same car together. I mean, that wasn't a good image for WWF that was, presenting itself as family entertainment for kids. So, yeah, he was real upset, and both those guys were fired. Although Duggan, they ended up bringing both of them back at a later date. But they were let go at that point.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, like today, is there any rules today about people feuding or heels and faces traveling together or being together?
You're in Ohio Valley.
Yeah, in Ohio Valley there are. That's about the only place left with those rules. God, Jim Cornette, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's funny, but I mean, that's the Bill Watts mentality that he came up with. But you're a heel and you're a face. You are not supposed to be in the same restaurant together or the same nightclub together or eating dinner together or anything like that. I mean, but that's about the only place where I think it's what's the word? Where I don't think anyone really takes that stuff seriously anymore. That's the one place.
I went on Roddy Piper's website a while back ago, and he seemed to be kind of upset with you. Like, you know what the deal is with that?
Can you give me the specifics? I don't know. It's Roddy, so I don't know.
Something about I think he said that you said that nobody cared about him anymore, and he was like really upset, and he started saying dirt sheet writer and this and that.
I don't know. I don't know that I've ever.
Did he mention Dave's name?
Yeah.
I don't know that I said nobody cares about him, but it's I mean, his time, unfortunately his time is somewhat past. I mean, I think that for a shot here and there, it's one of those things. This is a very heartless business to guys that were like superstars of our last generation. I mean, people really don't care that much. I mean, I think they'll come to see him once, but it's tough. It's tough. But I mean, I got nothing against Roddy Piper. I mean, I wish the best for him. But I just, it was what can you say?
Would you try to get him on or?
We've talked about doing the show, and he didn't want to do the show because he thought that he would get me in too much trouble. So, he doesn't really like doing shows like this that much, and I think he probably wants to keep himself, when he does it, he wants to do something big. But, no, we've talked about it. He almost did the one when Gordon Soley died. I think he was out of town that day, but that day he would have come on. I think that's like the only day in history he would have come on and done this show, but that day he would have. But he didn't, so what can I say?
Okay, well, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, let's go to Sean. Sean, what's up?
Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, Frank. It's a pleasure to talk to you, man.
My pleasure.
I'm a big fan, and I just had a couple quick questions for you. First is, in boxing, there's guys like Muhammad Ali, and last week in Sports Illustrated they did an article on football players who are, after their career's done, their bodies just, have gone to hell. And I was just wondering, how long do you give yourself, and are you worried that guys in the Ultimate Fighting are maybe going to pay the price when you guys are older?
I am definitely worried about that. And, I understand the longevity of my body in this career, and I also understand...
you don't want to take one too many fights. That's not good.
You don't want to take one too many fights, and you don't want to take one too many shots, and you don't want to have reoccurring injuries that you can't fix. The perfect example is the shoulder surgery that I just had. If I hadn't fixed it, I wouldn't have been able to fight again. So it's like... I understand what happens after my career, and a lot of people don't want to look at it, but that is my goal at this day, is to secure my future so that I don't have to fight when I'm 40 and I can't walk around anymore. My goal is to retire when I'm 30, and that'll give me, a nice 6, 7, 8 year career of fighting, and that'll be more than enough, and I'm sure I'll hobble plenty when I'm past 40.
Yeah.
But it's just the way it is. You work on the railroad your whole life, your hands break down, and your back goes out. You fight your whole life, your shoulders and your knees go out. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, wrestling, you got all those injuries, the hips and the knees and the back,
neck, and everything.
The neck, yeah,
always it's the same stuff. But you pay the price. We pay the price for a little piece of fame and to be big dogs for a little while and to pursue our dreams. And sometimes it's worth it.
What do you prefer more? Do you prefer the cage or rings?
I prefer right now a cage. And the reason why is because for the last 4 years I've patterned my training to fight in a cage.
Mm-hmm.
How would you train differently for a ring?
It's just there's not the wall. If you fight in a cage, you have a wall. It's a secure wall and it'll never move. If you fight on ropes, you have like a spongy wall. And that affects how fast you can come off of it. That affects if you get stuck in it or not. If you have a ring, you have to be aware of where you are so you don't get stuck in that hole. In a cage, it doesn't matter. It's so big, and you can walk up the wall, and you can't walk up ropes. And that's really the only difference. People that come from the ring and fight in the cage have a huge awakening. And people that come from the cage and fight in the ring have a huge awakening, because there's a different skill for each one.
Yeah, I like the cage more, but I think that right now, like with UFC and the whole martial arts are basically UFC and Pride, that type of trying to get like mainstream acceptance. I think it'd be easier for people to accept it if it was in a ring.
I think so too.
It just really makes no sense though, because it's actually more dangerous doing it in the ring.
Yeah, I know, but it's just that thing where people look at it and they think, oh, these guys are animals in a cage, And
it is an image problem. It is. In the beginning, it was designed to sell tickets. Now it's evolved in a way to protect the fighters. But we still have that problem as, well, they're fighting in a cage. Yeah, well, it's either that or fighting in a glass box so no one gets hurt. Yeah. We got to fight somewhere, and fighting in a ring is not the safest thing, but it is what everyone recognizes. So, we may, again, have to bend our rules and our sport to entertain the people, but hey, the people are the ones that matter, so who cares?
I got a question. You fought in rings,
yes,
for the first part of your career, and you had two really nasty falls. One was with the Bas Rutten fight, and one was with Yuki Kondo. And I mean, both times
fell right on my head, from at least 5 or 6 feet in the air, directly on top of it, right on the concrete.
Yeah.
And both times, I think both times I knocked myself out briefly.
Well, the boss fight, you got back up and fought.
I got back up, but I didn't know what was going on.
Oh, is that what it was?
I had no idea.
We actually have a question about that fight right here.
And at the end of the fight, I just remember looking at Jason DeLucia and going, what happened?
And the Kondo fight, that was it.
I actually shifted the plates in my head and had to see a specialist to have them readjusted.
Wow.
It was really, there are some serious dangers to fighting in a ring. That will have to be addressed eventually. But, my thing is, hey, I'll fight under whatever rules need to be on cable. Period. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
If I got to fight with one hand behind my back, in the bathtub, I'll do that so it can be on cable so we can make the next step. And that's where the industry is.
Yeah,
you can actually probably do that at the late night on cable.
They've let that on, but they won't let fighting on.
Yeah.
And my last thing is I think one of the major problems that boxing has right now is that they're not giving the fans the fights they want to see. Mm-hmm. Like, everyone wants to see Tyson Lewis, and now even that's been kind of shot to hell after Lewis losing, but...
Well, that's Lewis's fault.
Yeah, but, I don't know. Yeah. And Frank, I'm down on my knees right now, and I'm begging you, please give Tito a rematch, because that is the fight that I want to see. And after Tito knocks out Elvis, I just... And once you get better, I just please give him a rematch.
Well, that's it's definitely a thought, but it was a very good story, is what I have to say. The fight was okay, but the story was much better than that.
The fight was a good fight.
The fight was a good fight. The fight was one of the better fights we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
But the story made the fight so much better than what it was.
All right, Frank. Hey, best of luck, man.
All right, bro.
Okay. What's your thoughts about Sakuraba, and as far as, did you see the Silva fight?
Yes.
What are your thoughts on that fight?
I know that Sakuraba was sick and didn't want to fight.
Okay.
So it's like one of those fights that didn't need to happen, was pretty useless, and didn't really do anything for anybody. It didn't really help Vanderlei.
Made him a star in Japan.
He's going to be a star, but,
He's a tough guy. He's got a great look.
But, he's not going anywhere in the world, in the big picture. He's just a super tough guy, who needs plenty of stories built around him. It definitely hurt Sakuraba. It hurt my fight with Sakuraba. But it doesn't change the reason why I wanted to fight Sakuraba. That's because he's a badass fighter.
Yeah.
And he's got mad skills, and they, in my opinion, match up with mine. And regardless of what happened to him on that night, that interest is still there. I want to see if what I got matches up. I want to see if my toys are as big as his toys. That's what it's all about.
That fight's been talked about for a couple of years. I mean, is there any movement as far as I know Pride wants to come to the United States bad.
Yeah,
that would be the match if they want to come.
That would be the match, but I think the Pride mentality is he's got to fight Vanderlei and win first, which just sets him up for another
Can he beat Vanderlei if he's healthy?
He can beat Vanderlei.
Okay.
Vanderlei is a good fighter, a very, very tough fighter, but he is one-dimensional of sorts. So he's not a tough guy to beat. He's just a dangerous guy to fight. And so that discouraged me to see him lose there. It didn't discourage my want to fight him. I just knew that when he lost there, it was going to push back thing. And I've turned down a lot of fights. I've turned down a lot of situations because I wanted that event to happen, and I knew the change that it would do to me as well as to the martial arts community and the fighting world in general. And I saved myself for that. So it was kind of a bummer that it didn't happen at the time it was supposed to. But fighting is fighting, and I'll be around for a couple of years.
Let's go to is it Terry or Eric is next? Terry, what's up?
I'm here. How you doing, Dave?
Doing great. What's up?
Okay, yes. I got a question. Who are WWE stars under multi-million-dollar contracts?
Multi-million-dollar contracts?
$1 million contract one.
Downside guarantee. I would guess probably Austin, and I don't know that anyone else would be.
How about The Rock?
I mean, there's guys that make over $1 million, but I don't think. I mean, like their downside guarantee. Like Rock made $5 million, but his downside was $500,000. I think.
What was Big Show's deal?
Yeah, I heard his was
$950, maybe $1 million. Yeah, Big Show's right up there. Undertaker, just because he's been there so long, I think just out of respect for what he's done and everything, I would guess that he would probably be in that range, if not higher. But very few actually have $1 million guarantees. But there are probably 4 guys that are making over $1 million. I'm guessing.
I heard when X-Pac went back to the WWF, he had a $1 million a year deal.
No, he didn't.
No.
Not even close. I think it was $350. I'm guessing. I just remember when they were negotiating. I know that when he went back, I know that they insulted him with the first offer, and I think the insulting offer was $250, and he was really mad, and I think that they went up, and I'm thinking it may have been $350 that they came up to, and then he was happy and he went back, and he may have gotten a raise since then, a little bit, but I'm sure his
not
downside
to $1 million though.
No, I'm sure his downside. I would be shocked if his downside was over $5 million, just the way that they do their salary structure.
Yeah, what about The Rock and Triple H?
I don't know about Triple H's downside. The last I heard of The Rock, he signed a new contract. So Rock, I wouldn't, again, if he had a new contract, it wouldn't shock me at all if it was over $1 million. The contract he had before, the downside was $500. I can tell you Kurt Angle's downside is like something like $150. They haven't renewed it. He's making, probably 7 times that, but that's what his downside is.
Oh, Triple H, how much was his first?
Triple H, I don't know. I'm sure it's in the top 2 or 3 in the company, though. It's got to be. So it's, I wouldn't be surprised if Triple H's downside is $750 to $1 million. Maybe slightly more. Whatever it is, he's making a lot more than that anyway. So
whenever X-Pac was in WCW, I know his contract was more there also.
It may have been more in WCW than WWF. A lot of guys were.
Everyone.
He got fired over something that now sounds completely stupid, in that Eric Bischoff was mad at Hall and Nash but didn't want to get rid of him, so he fired X-Pac to for whatever reason it hit him in the ass, like many decisions that the man did. A bunch of emails here for Frank. What are your opinion on the Golden Glory fighters like Gilbert Ibel, Valentin Overeem, and Heath Herring?
They're all good.
Yeah, they are.
And I like them because they're they're kind of an exciting. They're a newer generation of fighters. They come from stand-up, but they're adapting the stand-up to the ground game. I like them. They're exciting fighters. They're like lucha libre from a different country. That's what they remind me of. They take whatever's in their country, which is kickboxing over there, striking over there, and they just kind of tweak it for combat.
What do you think of Overeem?
I like him. He's well-rounded. He's got a good look. He's tough. He's not 100% consistent, but he's young though. He's young, and that's the thing. Is we say youth is huge. How many times can you take one of the massive blows and not be affected by it?
Yeah.
And bounce right back from it. Youth is huge. So I really like those guys. I like what they've done with their style. It's an older striking system, but they've tweaked it and adapted it for a modern, freestyle fighting era. So I like that.
What's your thoughts as far as you've been to the K1 shows and everything like that? They have some awesome stand-up fighters. They're trying to make it in the United States. They're, as far as K1, Pride, all these guys. There's this thing, and it's very difficult to break through this, and it's the deal is when we pick up the newspaper, we will not read about UFC, we will not read about K1, and when you get to that point where you do read about it, it's probably going to make, whichever one gets there, will probably make it once they're entrenched. I mean, someone who's promoting, was used to be a professional wrestling promoter, who's switching over to the martial arts because I kind of saw the handwriting on the wall. And anyway, he was going like how come we were talking about this the night of the UFC, the last UFC news. How come they didn't have Randy Couture and Pedro Hizzo on ESPN? And I go, well, there's your answer right there. When they are, it will have made it, and it's not there yet. Yeah. As someone who's, where do you see that, and what do you think needs to be done? Because you're probably I would say, you and Tito would be the biggest stars in the United States, and you've had some opportunity to break through to the mainstream media, but other opportunities that similar athletes have gotten, you haven't gotten.
It's just our image. It's just what's going on. We are still, when you say Ultimate Fighting Championship or anything involved with that, people still see Hoist Gracie laying on his back, heel kicking some big sweaty guy, for 20, 30 minutes and blood and guts and everything. People they just don't know. And until they know, well, then everyone will know anyway, so it won't do it. Until then, it's really up to, I feel, the athletes of the sport and the fans of the sport to maintain the integrity of our sport. And when people ask about it, I go, no, it's this. You should check it out. Because that's what I do. People go, oh, that thing, cockfighting. And I go, well, you know what? That's what it was. And this is what it is now. And it's really interesting. You should check it out. So it's, what it is? It's going to be time. And we took the cheap route. And we threw 1 million pamphlet out that said, cockfighting, blood, guts, come and see it. The video thing. Live at the arena, blah, blah, blah. And now, all those people, they don't get to receive those pamphlets. So we have to go to each one of them individually and go, oh, and by the way, we've changed. And now we've got this going on. Here, look at it. And you've got to go to the next person, do the next thing again. And when enough of those people have a force, then we'll be back on cable television and stuff.
Randy Couture, Pedro Hizzo, you didn't agree with the decision. And a lot of people didn't.
I didn't agree with the decision when I was doing the interview after the fight.
Okay.
But after I watched the fight again, I changed how I felt about the fight.
Really?
After I watched the fight again, I believed that Pedro Hizzo did not take the belt from the champion. That he went and he fought hard, and he almost knocked him out a couple times, and he almost did this and he almost did that. But I saw the champion trying to beat him. And
Randy was the aggressor.
I saw the champion. When I went back and watched the fight, I saw the champion trying to beat Pedro Hizzo, and not Pedro Hizzo trying to beat the champion. And after I watched it, I said, I made a mistake.
Really?
I think Randy Couture got that fight. And the only reason he got it was he kept trying to win. And there was a point where he was unconscious, falling on his heels.
That second round, I couldn't
Pedro
believe
could have flicked him in the head.
Yeah.
And, you have to, at that point, extend yourself and take that belt, or you're not the champion.
How come? In that second round, a minute into that second round, we're sitting here and we're going, he's dead.
He's dead.
He's dead. He's done. He's dead. He's done. I actually was doing a thing on the website.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote, it's over.
It's over. He's done.
It's over. He's done. And he lasted the round. And even when he lasted the round, it's like, okay, so he's not going to get up for the third round. Yeah. He won't get up. He got up for the third round, and Pedro never finished him.
No. And I looked at it like this. I saw it live, and I thought he spent his load, and then he's just taking damage the rest of the time. And hey, let's look and see who took more damage at the end. And I felt like at the end of the fight, Couture was taking more damage.
Yeah.
He had received more, was taking more, and would continue to take more had it continued on.
I think he would have gone another round. He would have lost.
I think so, too.
Yeah.
But in the rules of the game and the way it's set up, when I looked at it again, there was one guy with a belt. The other guy's job was to take it from him. And he did not do that. He bled, he fought, he did everything else but reach out, extend himself, and take that belt from that champion. And that's what's got to be done.
What do you think of Dan Henderson, and how much do you think Dan Henderson's improved since when you fought him the first time?
Oh, immensely, 100-fold. Then he was a wrestler. Then he was a single-faceted martial artist. He didn't know the stuff we were doing. I had chess pieces when he had checkers, but he's got the pieces now. His last fight with Henzo was very impressive. Yeah. There's skill, manipulating the ring, manipulating power, movement. Really impressive. I think he's made huge improvements. I think he'll be a definite contender in whatever weight class he fights.
What's your favorite fight of your career?
Favorite fight of my career is the Ensign Inoue fight. And I'm torn now because, the Tito fight was really fun. I mean, really, I accomplished a lot in the fight. And
you beat a guy who had you by a lot of weight.
Yeah, leading, the challenge to me was a huge hurdle. But at that point, I'd had so many challenges that the Ensign fight was really the one where, there was a second in that fight where I looked over my corner like, I might get my ass kicked here. I hope you guys are watching closely.
Really?
It was one of those fights.
Really?
I didn't think I could lose.
Because I always thought, watching that fight, I always thought you were calm.
I was calm the whole time.
Yeah.
I was calm, cool, collected. I never lost it. But there was one point where I was mounted and he was elbowing me in the neck, and I kind of looked over at my corner and I just thought, I hope they're watching. I hope they're keeping a close eye on this because this could, this is one of those points. But then I to myself, I went, screw that. Mm-hmm. It's not going this way. And I came out of that, and me coming out of that spot made that fight, besides entertainment value, that made that fight really, really special to me.
If you had of all the UFC, Pride, whatever fights, is there any one fight that you would think of as like maybe being like the most exciting fight you've ever seen? Pancras, anywhere?
I can't pinpoint a single fight. I can tell you the fight that had the most amount of heat for me, which was Sakuraba and the Gracie fight. The story was, so big. That's the biggest fight that comes into mind for me. There have been so many fights, and I've been to so many different. So they all blend together, and I can't tell the fighters apart and the fights apart and anything else. And the other says I don't follow the sport. I don't go on the internet. I don't read the trade mags. I don't know what goes on unless someone goes, "This is Bob. This is what he does." And I go, "Hey, Bob, show me what you do." Mm-hmm. That's how much information I have on the sport. If I have an opponent, I will study him and everything about him. But other than that, I'm not really that involved in following the sport. I just don't have time. There's too much information now.
Yeah.
The beginning was one website. You go there, oh, great. So-and-so's winning. Now there's 50 websites. There's 50 letters. The magazines.
Just think about us for wrestling. Multiply that by 20.
Yeah. So, to me, this is one of my jobs, and I haven't been doing a good job lately because I've been hurt and injured. I'm about to turn on 100% attention to this job again, and we'll just see where it goes from there.
As a promoter, what if you had the chance as a promoter of fights as opposed to a fighter, okay? And you had rules, time limits, stand-ups, whatever. What do you think is the rules of a fight that would make the most attractive fight for spectators, for drawing people without turning into kickboxing, basically?
Yeah, and without turning off that other crowd, the head stomping and stuff like that. The best amount of rules, the best scenario of rules I have found is straight time, and
no rounds.
No rounds.
Okay.
But with the understanding that should the action stop, there will be a stand-up.
Yeah.
And that's kind of hard to monitor of sorts. But I think the rounds do something for the crowd. The rounds keep the fighters energized. They keep standing them up, and they have intervals. You can't just have a story that drones on and on and on. You need some highs and lows and things going on. I think that has helped enhance the viewing entertainment for the audience. I think you need knees to the head, elbow points, and all this other, stuff like that.
I don't like the football kicks, though.
I don't think the football kicks are necessary.
Okay. And
the only, from a purist standpoint, that's some of the most efficient ways to get rid of somebody. Oh yeah. But I don't want my mom seeing me kick some poor guy in the head. Even if it is a sport, there's still a little piece of that it's like, that's just a little off. And I don't want my kids watching me do that. So that stuff is not necessary. But I think pretty much anything else. Headbutting, I liked headbutting. Mm-hmm. And the reason why I liked it is it made people move.
Yeah, that's right. You can't rest.
You didn't hang out and rest there because dude was bringing his forehead down for your nose. It kept movement. I don't like people getting on all fours and being able to stay there with no recourse. That's a passive position. You should be punished for that. You get up and fight. Don't hang out there. So, I see a style that needs rounds for the fans, and also needs some sort of stand-up or interaction in there.
Now, we talked about this one time before. It's on the ground, and you do something where, as long as there's action and movement and everything and someone's working for a submission, you don't stand them up.
Right.
But when you see, a referee will see, this is going nowhere, give them like a 10 count or a 15 count and just go, okay, it's warning. And then both those guys, they got to move, and if you're just laying there, you're stood up. But it's not so like, okay, stand them up, because every time you throw in stand-ups, everyone starts blaming the referee. It's like, it's Big John's fault. You know what I mean?
And then it's just, and then it's random, and then it's like, when do we stand them up? I agree completely.
This way they got a warning.
And that's what they should do. And, we do the same thing in submission wrestling. Is you stop moving for more than 10 seconds, guy comes over and goes, stalling, and starts counting right away. And you hit 7 or 8 seconds, you're going to stop and be stood up.
Okay.
And that's what we need. One, the athletes got to take. They got to take responsibility. You go out there fat and nasty and whatever. Yeah, you're going to be choked up like a chicken because you can't fight. You got no wind. So athletes need to take responsibility for it. And then the promoters need to take responsibility to really solidifying and teaching the referees the rules, because we got guys out there that have no idea what's going on. I see guys being referees like, well, what did you do? Because how did you get that job? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're directly in charge of those two men's safety, and I've never seen you before in my life. So there's definitely a need for regulation and a need for good solid rules. But that stuff's a ways off, I think.
Let's go to Eric real quick. Eric, what's up?
Hello.
Hey there, Eric. What's going on?
Hey, after this decline in the WWF product, I started getting back into Japan stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I got Super J Cup 94 and watched it last night, and all I can say is that's an amazing event.
Yeah, they both of those J Cups back then were. And wrestling's just changed a lot too. The skill level of those guys, especially I tell you what, there's so many moves in wrestling where if you watch it now almost, it's like, wow, I've seen all that. But when they did that then in '94, that was really. Yeah, it was. I think that as much as you were impressed by it, I bet you if you watched it in '94, you'd have been even more impressed by it, because they were doing stuff that we'd never seen before.
Yeah, Benoit looked really young back then too. He was amazing.
Everybody ages, and people in wrestling age quicker.
He was younger then.
He looked a lot smaller back then too.
But guys in wrestling get big too.
I seem to remember him being pretty big. He was 95.
Benoit was always muscular every time I remember him, but I remember him from the mid '80s, and he was not nearly as big. But by the mid '90s, he was a pretty good sized guy.
Has Buck Bagwell's contract been expired yet?
May 1st? I guess it did. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, Frank.
Yes.
Frank, you've been commentating the last couple of UFCs, right?
I have.
Are you doing the next one?
I am.
I haven't watched UFC since number 3 because I kind of fell out of it, but after Dave's been talking about it, I'm kind of getting interested and probably going to order the next one. So.
Cool. Very cool. It should be a phenomenal show.
I'm a big wrestling mark, so you think I'd enjoy this new product?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, especially with the new companies that's taken over, they've really pushed the entertainment value end of it and the storyline end of it.
The fights are a lot. If you go back to number 3, the skill level of the fighters is much, much higher. The whole thing is, realistically, it's all personality and storyline and being able to get that stuff over. That's what really markets a fighting sport. And most fighting sports people don't really understand that. And a lot of wrestling people don't understand that too. It's the lure and what sells tickets, whether it was wrestling in 1908 or wrestling last week or fighting, is the same thing, and it's much easier. It's much easier to do it in pro wrestling because you control the pieces a lot more. Mm-hmm. So it's a harder game, but the one thing that the UFC has over pro wrestling is the unpredictability in the ring, that you really don't know what's going to happen next. Where in wrestling, they fool you, but it's I'm not trying to say one is better than the other. They're entirely different. I love them both. When I love them both when they're good, and I hate them both when they're bad. Actually, when it gets right down to it, So,
Brian.
Yeah.
Did you see Lucha on Tuesday?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
Giant Silver just looks all goofy looking on TV now with all those Mexicans out there, because he's so much larger than all of them.
I know.
Did you watch AAA?
I got up to Silva's match, which was about 8:15 or something like that, and then kind of fell asleep.
But I know I just care for the minis. That's it.
Oh, the AAA minis, they rule. We got a bunch of emails and a couple of calls. We're going to start with Jack in Nevada. Jack, what's up?
Hey, guys, how's it going?
Going really good.
Hey, Jack.
Anyways, what I was going to ask about, I think even the casual fan, assuming that there are any casual fans left watching wrestling based on these numbers we're getting, but even the casual fan, I think, knows that things need to be shaken up in the WWF. And along those lines, I was thinking about the RTC angle, which is like totally old. I think people are waiting for something to happen there. But it seems the WWF is just stalling on that. I mean, I guess on Heat they said something like they're, looking for a new leader maybe. Like it's not going to be Steven Richards, but...
Oh, the last thing we need is to keep them going with a new leader.
Yeah.
It's just played out.
It totally is played out. But the thing is, and I've written you about this, is, what are they going to do with Val Venus and The Godfather? I mean, with their whole Think Again campaign, they can't, go back to that direction with them, without totally crossing the line again. But that's what the fans want at the same time,
Yeah, it's tough.
How about just having Godfather do the same thing, but only send him on the road?
Not put him ever on television and just use him in opening matches to pop the live crowd?
Yeah, why not?
That's all Godfather ever was like a nice way to open a show. At an arena show.
But I think the eye candy, is another good part too there. But
that's where the problem is that that's where that's the thing. It's like, there's nothing wrong with having the women. I think that when they call them hoes, it kind of like there may be a way to do it, but not
it
call
insinuated
them
they were prostitutes.
Yeah, insinuating they're prostitutes. Because, hey, I mean, boxing has ring card girls, and nobody ever says that is objectification of women. Okay, so having the women out there in and of themselves is not bad. I think it's give him a new term, like the Godfather. Maybe he can be like the head of Dance Fever, and they could be his dancers. I don't know. No, but something like that. I don't. Just don't call them hoes. And I think that aspect of it wouldn't be that bad. And Val Venus, him being a porn star doesn't help anyway.
Right.
I mean, he's a good wrestler. He's just that gimmick got him over, and then that gimmick limited him, and then he's never been able to break through. And then this RTC gimmick, I think, has kind of killed him, really.
Right. Well,
looking back, can you even
at the beginning of his matches, his little stick, that was totally fun. But I don't think they can do much with the other RTC guys. Bull Buchanan, Steven Richards, Ivory. I don't think anybody wants to see them in.
Well, they don't. They don't want to see him in this gimmick or out of this gimmick.
At all.
Ivory. I don't know what to do with Ivory. I mean, and as far as Steven, yeah, and Bull's tough. Bull's like that big problem with the WWF is you got this huge guy with limited charisma and pretty decent athletic ability, who the idea of a real athletic 6'7", 300-pound guy, it's just not a big deal anymore, like it would have been in another period in wrestling. And so he kind of he's just like everybody else. He's just like everybody else there. He's got no special qualification, I guess.
Absolutely, and he totally lacks charisma. Even like when he was with the Boss Man,
He's always like that.
People at all.
Yeah, he lacked it in Ohio Valley too. I mean, in Ohio Valley he could get over just because nobody else.
He was a little bit better in Ohio Valley, I thought.
Well, maybe because he was more experienced than the other guys there.
Yeah.
And he could get over because, in Ohio Valley...
I remember watching him in Ohio Valley, and I could actually see, I kind of understand why the WWF would want to bring this guy in. But then once he appeared on WWF TV, it's like, okay, now I don't understand why.
Well, it's something, a 6'7" guy in Ohio Valley who's athletic, I mean, that's a keeper. But then you bring him to the WWF, and you got all those 6'7" guys, and they all move. And it's like, now you got to figure out a way to get over, and then, all of a sudden it's like, wow, he really doesn't have a lot of charisma.
Right.
So. Okay, I guess that was it. We're going to go to Clint.
That's it.
Clint, what's up?
Hi, I read an interview the other day on Tito Ortiz's website, and he was talking about how when he's done mixed martial arts, he was thinking about going into pro wrestling. And I was wondering what you guys, Dave, freaking Brian, thought about that.
Brian, why don't you answer it, and I'll give my answer after you. And we can let Frank talk about it because he knows Tito better than us.
I do?
No, Frank knows Tito better than both of us.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen a whole lot of Frank. I mean, I saw, as far as like the Ultimate Fighting guys, when he tries to cut a pro wrestling style promo, he's better than most of the guys that try to do it. But I think right now, if you put him in the WWF, it'd be a task. And I just think that the biggest detriment that he's going to have is it's going to be the whole Ken Shamrock thing, where he's got this certain deal where he's an Ultimate Fighter and he's damn good, but he's going to go to the WWF where they just don't get it.
Yeah. And then if they don't get it and you're not anything special, you got to go out there and outwork those guys.
Plus, with his size in the WWF.
Well, he can put on weight. He'd be a decent sized guy. But I mean, the thing is, but he wouldn't have that training that these other guys had, so he wouldn't be the worker. I mean, like, you know, look at Abbott. I mean, Abbott's just an absolute disaster in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
You know. So I don't know, Frank. What do you think as far as Tito as a pro wrestler or anyone?
Well, he's definitely got the physical abilities and the mental desire. He wants to do it.
Hey, he's got a good look.
Yeah, he's got a look, and he really is that look. It's not like a stretch for him. He's living in that hardcore area, Orange County. You know, that's what goes on there. So he knows, I think, where he wants to go. If he wants to get there, I don't see him having a problem getting there. It's just, that's a whole nother world of, getting over and acting and carrying yourself and roles.
And a totally different kind of training.
It's just another world, and it's like it would be another career.
Yeah.
Completely. And he may be able to use a little bit of, notoriety to springboard himself in there, but, it's a bottoms-up whole, from the bottom-up career again.
It'd be better for
One thing is, though, you just never know, you know? I mean, look at Kurt Angle.
You never know.
Maybe he's a freak.
You don't know. Some guys, if they just are quick learners, they can do it real well. And in Japan, I think it would mean something because he's had some fights in Japan, and the transition to New Japan Pro Wrestling for an Ultimate Fighter is easier.
Yeah.
Because they kind of know how to work
now.
with it.
And they have a stiff style in there.
Rainy Martinez.
Yeah, stiff stuff.
Yeah. Well, Rainy Martinez, that was a disaster. Rainy Martinez wrestled Yuji Nagata at the Fukuoka Dome 2 weeks ago. Total disaster. You remember Rainy Martinez? He fought Jerry Bolander.
He was going to fight in Bushido.
Somebody asked me
a couple weeks ago.
Somebody asked me on this show about Jerry Bolander, and I said we were going to ask you what's happened to Jerry Bolander.
I haven't. I saw him the other day, 205 pounds. He had a really tough fight in King of the Cage about 5-6 months ago against a pretty relatively unknown guy. Really tough fight. Ended up winning, but we haven't heard much of him lately. I don't know how his training and stuff are going. But as far as I know, he's still fighting and into the fighting. I know that he trains fighters, so that makes me think he's still fighting.
Mm-hmm. What did you think as far as Pete Williams and Semi Schill going in and coming out of that fight? What are your thoughts? Because I know Pete real well, and you know Semi too.
I know them both. Weird thing is, both. I was there when both of those guys, started. I remember when Semi. We were showing him submission holds in the back of the Pancras room because he didn't know anything.
It's just this giant guy walking in.
He was a giant. I picked Pete.
You teach him the wrist squeeze?
Yeah, the wrist squeeze, the hands bigger than your head hold. He's really weird. I picked Pete to beat him and to, beat him fairly decisively. Here's a guy who's taken his biggest strength, and that's his height, and used it to create a style. It's just weird.
Yeah.
But it's really effective. I mean, he's the only guy using, front kicks in the UFC to knock people down.
The thing with him, I mean, there've been other guys that are like 6'8", 6'10", running around, but I don't think any of them have the ability. I don't know if he's got unusual reach because he's so much more effective than say we saw. I don't remember Dan McGee, who was like a 6'10" guy, but he didn't impress me at all.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Semi is a guy that knows how to use his length, and that's his strength. And like you saw, Pete Williams was sitting in his guard, and Semi just stretched his whole body out. And Pete told me, he said, I couldn't move. I couldn't move my body at all. I couldn't get my arms out. I couldn't move my legs. It's like I was on a stretching rack because the guy was so long and his hands were so big. He was just, stretching him open, waiting for his chance to get out. And, I don't think that we've seen too many real athletes who are skilled at fighting at that height. I've seen a lot of big guys, but Semi's really skilled. He's going to go a long way. He's going to be really tough to beat with that height. And he didn't get to throw any knees or do any crazy stuff because that's when it gets really scary out there.
Oh, when they got shoot on him and he hits that knee? I've seen it so many times.
Marching with those knees across the ring, and
just like when the guy's nose is split up. Oh boy! During the Ensign fight, at one point you were mounted and you whispered something to him and you both started laughing. What was that?
It wasn't actually anything to do with me. I was really focused on doing my thing, but Ensign's corner was very vocal, and they were saying, "You've got him now. You've got him mounted. You're gonna kill him. You just need to da-da-da-da." And they were bantering back and forth. Ensign's father and brother, and Maurice, who was in my corner. So at one point in the fight, the action stalled. I'm mounted. He got tired of hitting me. I got tired of getting punched, and we just kind of chilled for a second. But our corners were still fighting. So his corner's going, "You got him, punch him, punch him." And my corner's going, "Yeah, you got him, hit him, hit him. He likes that, he likes that." So they're fighting, and me and Ensign are just sitting there. So at one point, like, we hear this, and I look up at him, and he looks up at me, and we just laugh. We just had a weird moment. We just laughed, and then we went back to the business at hand. The corners were fighting. They were verbally beating each other up, and we were out there just...
Hey, I thought that after that fight that...
I thought the whole thing was going down after that.
Yeah, I thought things were going down after that one, boy.
Yeah, it was great. His brother rushed in and threw me on my head and stuff.
After the match.
That's the little pro wrestling move there.
Yeah.
Little run in.
Yeah, that's right. Have you ever seen that tape, Brian?
No.
Okay, Frank knocks him out with a knee, right?
Yeah, left, right, and then knee right to the chin.
Yeah, he knocks him out with a knee. The guy's out. And then the corner just runs in and it's basically a pro wrestling run-in.
Yeah.
And they knock Frank off. He, flips forward, lands right on his head. Then Maurice runs in. And, everyone's it's like a
he's a total pilot.
Yeah. It's like a baseball fight thing. If you have only 6 fights left, who would you like to fight?
6 fights?
6 fights.
I'd cut it in half.
I don't think you're going to get 6.
I'd only do 3. And I'd fight Sakuraba, Hickson, and myself.
Fight yourself?
Yeah, I would fight myself.
How are you going to do that?
Well, I haven't figured it out yet. But,
you can get money for it, though. That's a hell of a
game. Yeah, I'd get paid, most definitely.
I'll get paid.
It always intrigued me that I could do all this stuff. And I've always wanted to find someone or find an equal of myself and do battle with him to see what would happen. That's just one of my weird things that intrigues me.
How about Silva or Vitor?
Silva. I think Silva's more dangerous.
Yeah.
I know how to beat Vitor.
Okay.
But Silva would be a bit more danger and a bit more work.
Mm-hmm. And he asked this email about Hayato Sakurai. What do you think of Hayato Sakurai?
Sakurai, best pound-for-pound fighter in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
He's not a phenomenal grappler. He's not a phenomenal wrestler. He's not a phenomenal striker. But he's really good at all of them. Mm-hmm. And I was really proud of my last 11 fights, all finished differently. Knee bar, knee knockout, throw, arm, all these different holds. He's a guy that finishes every single fight with a different move. And I've never seen one of his fights finish with the same moves. He knocked out Frank Trigg convincingly. He's just a super tough guy. His only problem is that he's in Japan. Mm-hmm. If he could break out into our world, I think it would elevate our sport immediately.
What are the holdups? You do not want him to fight here, or?
He's their star.
Yeah.
He's their guy. And it's a different game for him to go fight in a cage, different game for him to come to the United States. I'm not sure why he's not here, but, if I had a company, he'd be fighting for me.
Mm-hmm. Now, what about the marketability thing, okay? I mean, to make it in this country, you need good fights, but you do need American stars. I don't think that...
Totally.
You could go in there and have, just whether it would be pro wrestling or this, and you get some of those awesome Japanese fighters, but if it's Japanese against Japanese, in this country, it's not going to fly.
Yeah.
I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I think.
But, we want to see our peers. We want to see our friends, family, neighbors, people we associate with doing the deed, that we can live through that and emulate some of that. It has to be. We have to have American stars.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is, And if any Japanese company comes here, they have to have American stars. And if we go to Japan, they have to have Japanese stars. So, yeah, the focus is on the American star. But, it's our country, and we're paying the bills. We have to have Oscar De La Hoyas.
That's the key, is to find a Tiger Woods.
You need someone that everybody can go, wow, I could do that. Or, wow, I could be a part of that. Or, that everyone can associate with. And, you're having the same problem in wrestling.
But a lot of the thing with Oscar De La Hoya, too, is, Oscar De La Hoya was made. he was a great fighter, and he had to be a great fighter or it wouldn't have worked. But whether it was, Tiger Woods was a phenom. That's totally different. But Oscar De La Hoya, I mean, I remember him before he ever had his first professional fight, and he was already being groomed by everyone to be the big thing. And so I mean, it's like the media created the Oscar De La Hoya, and great for the world of boxing that he was also able to deliver when he started fighting the top guys. In this thing, you've got to find a guy, create him. Vitor Belfort was the guy who I know that they really wanted to do, but then, when push came to shove, whatever problem it was, Vitor didn't make the grade. I mean, UFC thought this was the guy, the exciting fight, the great knockouts.
Yeah, it's about building stars. You have the same problem in wrestling right now. Where's our future stars?
Yeah.
And, we're having the same problem. And, we just keep building it.
Yep.
We just keep going. It'll work itself out.
We are totally out of time, Frank. I want to thank you very much for doing the show. Brian, thanks for hanging out. And we will be back tomorrow at 5 with Les Thatcher.